Hello and welcome to Friday Double Bill. This is the show where we review the top Friday releases from both Hollywood and Bollywood. Well, we don't just review these films, we also look at the OMG or the oh my god moments and we arrive at a movie verdict. So you can decide, or at least we'll tell you, whether we thought the film was a Dekho or Peko at the theatres.
That's right, and coming up first is our review of the Priyanka Chopra starrer, Mary Kom, followed by Jennifer Aniston's Life of Crime, and then the much-awaited Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Does Mary Kom the film pack a punch? Let's find out.
Mary Kom, directed by first-time filmmaker Umang Kumar and produced by Sanjay Leela Bhansali, is an authorized biopic of Indian female boxing champ MC Mary Kom. Priyanka Chopra plays the title role. Mary is from Manipur in the northeast. Her father, who used to be a wrestler, is not in favor of her donning the boxing glove. On her own steam and with the help of a master coach, Mary becomes the national champion and thereafter also picks up the world title. At the peak of her career, Mary gets married, has 2 children, and has to say bye-bye to the sporting world. This does not leave her happy or feeling satisfied with life. Despite raising 2 infants, the champion boxer returns to the ring, hoping to reclaim the world title.
You know, it's important to distinguish between Mary Kom, the athlete, and Mary Kom, the film. Essentially, there is a lot to admire in the film as well, given that there's terrific cinematography, lots of wonderful handheld camera work, lovely tracking shots, great production design. I actually was quite impressed with Umang Kumar's direction. It was in a short debut, low-key in that sense. So there's actually a lot to admire. And obviously, this has been created as a vehicle for Priyanka Chopra. The woman has worked her off, I presume, among other body parts to make this her own. It's de-glam, there's a lot of effort put in, and unfortunately I found, Mayank, that the film suffered because of that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, since we are on Priyanka Chopra, she is one of those actors who's made it a point to have her film completely centered on her. She's done films like, Saath Khoon Maaf, What's Your Rashi, but I felt in those films it was so much about Priyanka Chopra than the characters she's playing, though she was playing multiple characters in those movies.
And not very well at that.
Well, the movies themselves were
Yes.
not that great, though I thought Saath Khoon Maaf was not so bad. But here is a story which is about Mary Kom, and therefore Priyanka Chopra happens to be the center of attention because of very strong character, I felt. And this is what they call the author-backed role. She's clearly lined up for a Filmfare nomination for sure next year, and various others that happened between February and June.
No doubt.
But I think what I really loved about this film, and people would have loved it, regardless of having watched the film itself, is the fact that this is set in the Northeast. I can't remember too many films which have been entirely set in this, though I'm sure it's been shot somewhere else. This is about a character who belongs to that region. I can't remember a Bollywood hero or heroine who's been from that region. I think Amir Khan, Funsuk, Wanchuk, or whatever he played in 3 Idiots would be an example.
That's right.
In fact, there is a first Arunachal film that just come out in the theaters called Crossing Bridges that I've been hearing lots of good things about. I'd like to check it out this week for sure. So there's that element of Northeast which I thought was something that sort of captivated my attention. But given that we are in Northeast, and not just in Northeast, we're in Manipur, which is perhaps one of the most troubled spots in that region, one of the things that I thought the film should have touched upon is the problem that they've been going through. Outside of Mary Kom, the world champion that India has produced, the most famous person from Manipur would be Irom Sharmila, who's been on, hunger strike for 14 years, fighting against the Indian government, fighting against special powers given to the army. There is, I think, just 1 or 2, bits in the film, that right-like situation that is shown. I think it was a great opportunity to discuss that problem, to bring it to the forefront. I just felt maybe the filmmakers thought it'd be too much for them to chew.
Absolutely. I mean, this is very clearly a sports biography. They touch upon it, like you say, but they don't really invest themselves into it for obvious reasons. What is really marvelous is that other than Priyanka Chopra, almost every single character is from the Northeast,
right.
and they are terrific performances. It's so refreshing to see that. The fact that Umang Kumar, who is famous for making glitzy sets, has just captured the essence of a very low-key, beautiful, the genteel poverty in which these people and the natural beauty of Manipur. So I mean, I think for that itself we have to salute the film and its ambition.
Well, that brings us straight to the OMG or the oh my god moments from Mary Com.
Problem with films like this is that because it's a biopic and it's also an athlete who's currently still striving for gold.
This story is not over yet.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
and it's a work in progress. Is to build dramatic tension, and therefore they use filmmakers. Unfortunately, like this, have used artificial devices to inject vigor into the screenplay. So you've got her husband, who in reality is just the most extraordinary, man. I mean, he's obviously a self-actualized human being supporting her the way that any life partner should be. He really epitomizes what a good husband should be. Calls her just moments before she's supposed to go back to fight for the world championship, to tell her that their little son is going to have an operation, and that obviously shakes her up. Now this, and therefore you intercut between the operation and the fight and all of that. Now this kind of cinematic devices and cinematic liberties actually, makes you manipulated, and I think is completely uncalled for.
But it's still a lot better than I had imagined, purely because my big, fear before walking into the theater was how much are they going to Bollywoodize this film? This is Sanjay Leela Bhansali, who's the producer, also credited as the creative director of the movie. And there is that Mr. Sharma, who's from the Sports Federation, and he's your typical Bollywood villain who has absolutely no redemption around him. And though I think it was kind of necessary as a character purely because this is looking at what plagues Indian sport, and sporting federations, the netas and the politicians who run them is a prime example of exactly where we could have reached and where we are at this point.
Well, we only have to look back to our headlines of a few weeks ago where we had two babus from the Indian contingent.
Every week, I would think.
Who made such an of themselves between molesting some poor girl and drunk driving. And this is the kind of nonsense that these guys get up to when they go abroad and even over here. So while it is indeed a stereotype, unfortunately, unless our babus do that.
Probably necessary. But I think my favorite moment from the film would be when Mary Com, MC Mary Com, or Priyanka Chopra in this case, she decides to go back to the ring. And there's that mentor of hers, the mentor coach, who finally accepts the fact that he should help her out. And that Kodak moment where the two babies of hers are strapped behind her, I think that particular second, I felt slight goosebumps, and that's what a film like this should do to us.
Completely, and that, and in that same tone, I think it's wonderful that Umang has been able to capture lots of little vignettes like this. There's a scene where the kid has actually done susu all over the newspaper, which is a memento of her having won the third time the world championship, and she just crumples it and throws it into a bin because for her, in a sense, it's all over until, of course, she comes back.
Well, one of the reasons why we go to the movies is to feel inspired about life. Very few things around us make us feel like that. And a sports story on a film like Mary Com, because she is that world champion, certainly inspires us to watch films like these, to feel good about ourselves, to feel good about the human race, as it were. The second thing that I really loved about the movie is that it's almost exactly 2 hours long, which is at least an hour shorter than Bhag Milkha Bhag. Bhag Milkha Bhag was also, I thought, a fairly decent film, but in terms of biopics, I mean, a guy who came fourth in the Olympics compared to a person who's held the world championship 5 times, I mean, it doesn't compare. It's a theatre badeko from my end for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mayank. The fact is that if that was Bhag Milkha Bhag, this is Mar Mary Mar, and I hope it really, really delivers a great knockout at the box office. And salute Mary Com and Umang Kumar for having actually done a film with integrity and honor. Well done. Well, you know what we thought of Raja Natwar Lal. Let's find out what the Desi Martini audience has to say.
Raja Natwar Lal is rated 2.9 stars out of 5 by more than 800 viewers, making it a decent watch. The verdict says Raja Natwar Lal starts off as a clever masaledar revenge drama that eventually becomes too twisted and tedious to follow. Even Imran Hashmi's charm cannot redeem this disappointingly lazy film. Movie jockey Smita says the makers of Raja Natwar Lal obviously think that the viewers of this movie are as stupid as the people the conmen cheat in the movie. Krish goes on to say, it starts with a lot of promise and has some decent twists but fails to retain the charm for too long.
Well, we're just getting warmed up for a discussion on the big Hollywood release this weekend. That's The Life of Crime.
18th hole. My wife is up there watching from the clubhouse.
Based on Elmore Leonard's 1978 novel, The Switch, Life of Crime is a dark caper comedy starring Jennifer Aniston, John Hawkes, Isla Fisher, and Tim Robbins. The wife of a corrupt real estate developer is kidnapped by two common criminals who intend to extort him with inside information about his crooked business and offshore accounts. But the husband decides he'd actually rather not pay the ransom to get back his wife, setting off a sequence of double crosses and plot twists that could only come from the mind of Elmore Leonard.
Go ahead.
Frank?
Draw $1 million out of your account.
I'm gonna call the cops. If you go to the police, you will never see her alive again.
Who was that?
I don't know.
Well, the Elmore Leonard novel, The Switch, that this film is based on, is actually a prequel to Rum Punch. Rum Punch is what made Jackie Brown. I know a lot of hardcore Quentin Tarantino fanboys will slap me for saying this, but before Inglourious Bastards, before even Django Unchained, I thought the best Tarantino film that I had seen was not Reservoir Dogs, was not Pulp Fiction, but Jackie Brown.
I agree.
And now, in that sense, if this film is a prequel, I'd already braced myself for the occasion. I was already very happy getting into the theater. I thought the film was funny in parts. I thought it was fun also for major portions. But then this is not a Tarantino-directed film, and so pacing is an issue. But by and large, I was quite happy with the film.
Well, let's not forget that, Get Shorty was
Right.
directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. You have Out of Sight, directed by Steven Soderbergh. These are master directors at the absolute top of their game. Unfortunately, the same doesn't compare over here. So what we have is a very sloppily paced film, I thought, and a real shame because this film really reminded me of Ruthless People, which was a great Danny DeVito, Bette Midler comedy. And this is the same premise. Don't forget, this book was written in 1978. So obviously, they tried to make it several years, and the fact that they've made it in the new millennium, there's a reason for that. It's a very dated story.
Well, getting to the OMG or the oh my god moments from this film, Fahad, I think there are quite a few of them, but my favorite one is unfortunately something I can't reveal on this show because that would be a spoiler, and I actually want people to watch this film, which is the last scene where the whole plot sort of culminates into this larger whole, which I thought was pretty well done. Otherwise, in general, there were lots of portions which I thought from the writing point of view were quite funny, were very clever, and by and large kept me up for the most part.
Yes, well, I was nodding off, so I'm glad they kept you up. Having said that, because I had a real problem with the pacing of this film. Having said all that, I think the fact is that it's cool, it's clever, it's a little bit of deja vu, a little dated, but what the hell.
Well, I know Fahad will disagree with me, but I would go with Weekend Pe Dekho so far as this film is concerned for various reasons. One is the 70s, the period that this film is set in, which is probably why it looks so dated to you and you wanted to sleep. The second is the subject itself. It's a very riveting plot, and if I think Woody Allen was to direct this movie, he would have taken this to another level too, but I like the way they've taken this one as well.
It's not so much about not liking the film. I think I have a huge admiration for Elmore Leonard. Jennifer Aniston has acquitted herself admirably. I'm really not against this film at all. I think you should watch it. Well, you have a film like American Hustle set in exactly the same time frame. So it's not like I have any problems with period films. I love them as much as the next guy. I just think that this film has, when I said dated, I meant in terms of the plot, the fact that these things have been seen before by audiences, and also these Elmore Leonard films. The novels have been done by such masters that unfortunately this one pales. Having said all that, I still think you should watch it. Watch it at your leisure, either in the theater or at DVD. You will not regret it, I'm sure.
Well, let's see if Fahad or I am just as excited about the next release, which is Sin City, A Dame to Kill For.
Just another Saturday night.
Power is a fragile thing.
Starring Josh Brolin, Eva Green, Jessica Alba, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Mickey Rourke, Paz Booth, Bruce Willis, Rosario Dawson, and Ray Liotta, Sin City, A Dame to Kill For is the sequel to Roberto Rodriguez and Frank Miller's 2005 hit film Sin City. This largely black and white neo-noir film is the weaving together of graphic novelist Miller's classic stories with new tales where Basin City's most hard-boiled citizens cross paths with some of its more notorious inhabitants.
Sin City's where you go in with your eyes open. Or you don't come out at all.
Well, Sin City 2, as this is of course the sequel of Sin City, which was 9 years ago, and that was not just a hit film, that was in fact a cult film. And one of the things about cult films is that they become critic-proof if the sequels come into the theaters. They become critic-proof not so much because of large audiences, but because of critics themselves. I think it becomes almost blasphemous for us to take on a movie that has such huge cult status, not just among Robert Rodriguez fans, but also among Frank Miller's fans. In fact, even Quentin Tarantino fans, because that's really how it started. The whole structure of the film, the first one, was taken from Pulp Fiction. In that sense, and given the whole hype around it, in my own head, perhaps, I was quite disappointed.
Well, you know, I agree with you, and this is because these are masters of chiaroscuro, you know, the art of playing with light and shadow. And this kind of neo-noir, just incredibly stylized, superb graphic novel, and the fact that they have actually shot this in 3D adds a completely new dimension, depth, in a truly third dimension to this novel. So cinematically, technologically, it's just an incredible leap. Roberto Rodriguez has shot it, he's edited it, he's obviously co-directed it. Frank Miller is a terrific graphic artist, but he has some really poor lines, some really corny lines. This is third-rate sort of Mickey Spillane, Raymond Chandler writing. So, you know, that was a huge failing. I was very disappointed. And given that this is black and white film, there are not very many gray characters, you know. They're basically just either black or white, you know.
Well, talking of OMG or oh my god moments from a book or a graphic novel, which I think is really a children's book for adults. And in fact, I think graphic novels are really written for adults who don't read books. Now, when you're adapting something like that, quite clearly the whole point of it is a series of OMG moments, and there are quite a few of them, and those shootouts and the blood spilling out. I have also a strange suspicion that we missed out on some great ones purely because of the censor board in this country, and I think purely as a mark of protest, we should not get into the ones that we saw. We should go and watch the ones that we couldn't.
Exactly. I think this is where I concur completely with you. The fact that, you know, the censor board, last week we saw November Man, 5 minutes of the film had actually been left on the cutting floors. This week with this film, and you know, one must be able to watch films in their entirety the way that the filmmaker intended to do. We're watching sort of really mercilessly hacked, even more mercilessly hacked than some of the ninja killers in this film of ours. But there you have it. So I hope they really end up sort of sorting out these problems with the censors, and we get a slightly more informed, mature way of dealing with movies.
About time, seriously. Well, a film like this is really more of an experience, to be honest with you, Fahad, than a film in that sense, in a narrative sense of the word. And you know, you're obviously blown away by the novelty of the experience if you haven't seen Sin City. But Sin City 2, in that sense, after a point in time, I thought until, you know, about the first 45 minutes or so, it was quite riveting as a plot, but you know, it left me cold by the end of the film. So far as I'm concerned, and especially given that we don't even know what we missed out in this film, I would say theater par mat dekho, shayad DVD par dekho, shayad computer par dekho, it might be a better experience.
You know, Mayank, I share your dismay, but I still believe this film has to be seen in the theaters, particularly because the 3D adds such a huge element. By all means, watch the original film on DVD, then go out and watch this. Understand what is being done in the world of cinema, the kind of technological advancements that have happened, and then decide for yourself whether you're a fanboy or whether this is all worthy of a full-on pico. Well, this is the second week in a row where instead of a double bill, we've given you what we hope is a triple treat. Don't you think, Mayank?
I agree, Fahad. Also, we have something called a trailer talk on this show where we look at or dissect the top trailers that release in social media, or at least the ones that are trending. There's one trailer that we came across where we had nothing to say whatsoever. It left us speechless. That's the one we're going to leave you with. It's called Deer versus Bear, or I'm not too sure whether it's Deer versus Bear or Dare versus Bear or Deer versus...
Do you dare to bear? Watch this and weep.
जब मैं तुमसे नफरत करता था तब भी मैंने तुम्हारा साथ दिया। आज मौत के डर से मैं तुम्हें छोड़ दूं, ये तो स्वार्थ होगा।